All right, today I'm joined by Steven Tey from Dub. You might know him from the time that he was a developer advocate at Vercel, creating content around NextJs and all things Vercel, or recently from the company that allows you to manage your links and shorten your links and track analytics on your links, which is an amazing platform that we're going to dive deeper into. I have become a user myself recently and I started loving it. I was like, I gotta talk to Steven, both because of the new company and the startup and the exciting things happening there, but also because of your background in Vercel and as a developer advocate. That's how I got to know you. So, Steven, thank you for joining me on this session.
Of course, thank you for having me. It's a pleasure to be here.
Awesome. So, I don't know if you've seen my channel before from the time that you were.
I've watched a few episodes, did some research before. Really enjoyed the ones that you did with, I believe it was Zeno from Recent and a few others. So yeah, I'm a big fan here.
Awesome. It's great to hear that. So back in the days where you were working at Vercel as a developer advocate, that's how I came across templates that you were creating, projects that you were creating, blog posts here and there that you would have. And my audience is mainly, I would say, React and Next.js developers. So it's an interesting intersection there between your background and how you became a voice in the Next.js community, and then also going on to create your own startup. So why don't we start with actually an introduction to yourself, or how
Sure.
Your background story of even before you got into Vercel. How did you start programming, and walk us through the path, your journey?
Sure. We can start from the beginning. I feel like there's some takeaways from my early entrepreneurship attempts that we can sort of piggyback off. So I grew up in Malaysia. For those of you that don't know, I spent about 19 years of my life there, and throughout my, I would say, high school years, I started doing a lot of entrepreneurship attempts. The most notable one would be I wrote a book. I wrote a science fiction novel, and that's sort of where I nurtured my creativity and entrepreneurial spirit as well, because I had to pitch the book to local publishers and eventually got featured in the biggest bookstore in Malaysia. So that was really cool.
I didn't know about that.
I know, if you Google "someone's in my head," it's kind of crazy. It's still, I don't think there are any available copies anymore, but you can see the Amazon page, the Goodreads page, and stuff like that. So yeah, that was my childhood. I grew up being very sort of resourceful and go-getter, and trying to do multiple things and see what can generate the most, not just monetary value, but also satisfaction personally. And then I went to college. I went to this school called Minerva that is in the US, and the unique part of Minerva is it's actually very selective. So I think it was 1% acceptance rate or something like that. And the best part is students get to travel to a different country every semester. So we started out in San Francisco, and then we went to places like Seoul in South Korea, India, Hyderabad, Buenos Aires in Argentina, London, and all these different cities in the world. And we got to work and live in these different cities. And through that experience, I actually got to build a couple of startups, just projects with a couple of friends. And during my freshman year of college, actually, I got accepted into this incubator that was based in Tokyo with 3 other friends of mine. We were building an NFT marketplace startup of all things, and that was my first sort of foray into building a tech startup, and really enjoyed the experience of being able to start from scratch and be very not just resourceful, but also figuring out how to go to market, how to build an actual application in React. Back then there was no Next. I think there was Next.js, but it wasn't as popular. It was 2018. So yeah, that was my early entrepreneurial days, and over time I really enjoyed the ability to build something that people can use. And in college, I actually started data science, so I did a lot of like Python and Jupyter notebooks and stuff like that. So it wasn't really building a product that end users could use. So I remember this happened in around like 2020 when the pandemic hit. I was sort of stuck at home, and I realized I had like an epiphany moment that I needed to learn how to code, and not just like on a data science level, but also building a full stack application, being able to build something that end users can actually interact with. So I taught myself to code. I learned HTML, CSS, jQuery, nothing fancy, none of the sexy frameworks nowadays. And that was like how I picked up full stack programming. And yeah, it was a lot of like trial and error in the beginning, but I built this platform. It was called One Word Domains. It's actually still up and running, which is kind of cool. If you search One Word Domains, it's probably the first result on Google. It's basically this repository of available one-word domain names across 92 different TLDs, and it came from like a personal need that I had at the time, which is I wanted to find a cool one-word domain name for a different side project. So I built that platform, and it took off. I launched it. It got to number 2 in product hunts and like the front page of Hacker News. And over time, it sort of became my startup. And I was building it for about a year or so. And after that, the way I got to know Vercel was actually because I reached out to the partnerships team at Vercel. I was like, I have a domains product here. It's really cool. You guys have a domains product as well. Let's partner up. They never responded. They ghosted me for like a week. And I was like, you know what? I'm just going to reach out directly to the CEO. So I sent an email to Guillermo. And surprisingly, he actually responded. He was like, we're not focused on domains right now, but what about we have a chat? What you're building seems pretty cool. So we jumped on a Zoom call, went well, did another Zoom call, and eventually met in person when I came back to San Francisco for like my final year of college. And yeah, that's sort of like when we sort of got to know each other. And eventually I wanted to basically raise some venture funding for One Word Domains and sort of rebrand it to a different name and go down that VC backed route. And right when I was about to sign like the safe note for the seed round, Guillermo actually said, you know what, why don't you instead of starting your own company right now, come join Vercel and sort of kickstart your career here and learn about B2B sales, open source, about hiring and managing people. So I was like, okay, let's do it. And it was hindsight was a fantastic decision, because I realized the sort of amount of maturity and also experience that you need to actually run a company. So looking back, I not only didn't have that sort of maturity in myself, but also I didn't have as much conviction in the product I was building at the time. So yeah, starting at Vercel was a fantastic move. So yeah, that's basically, I know I've been going on a tangent here. We can cut however much we want, but happy to dive a bit more into the Vercel side of things and what happened afterwards.
No, that was actually awesome. I got to know the whole picture of how you ended up being where you are now, because oftentimes, we have snapshots of folks that we know or follow their journey, but we don't actually know how they ended up here. Looking at the company that you have created, Dub, for link management and domain solutions, one might think that you, like from my perspective, I know you from working in Vercel as a developer advocate, and then you branch off to create this as a startup. Not knowing your background, I think, oh, you just made this and it's a success. But it's not actually that. You've been going through this, creating different companies, different products back in the days, and then eventually ending up on a product with all of those experiences combined to now have this success, which is great to know. It reduces the pressure sometimes for folks that want to inspire to do something similar. They feel like they have to just come up with a grand slam product or company and it be successful. But a lot of times, successful companies is just through iterations of failed products, failed companies, and then one sticks out and one gains traction.
Yep.
Oftentimes through the experience that they gain through those ups and downs and the mistakes that they had done in the past. So it's very interesting for me to know that even though you were studying data science before, you weren't actually coding in terms of full stack developer up until the pandemic, like 2020, 2021, which is great, because I've used your products, and I forgot to mention in the beginning that one of the products that I have used, and I actually have a video on the channel about it, is Novel, the WYSIWYG text editor there. And it's almost the go-to when I want to create any type of rich text editor in any application. I just slap in that product into that. And what I realized looking at that product and then also looking at Dub is how meticulous you are about the way that you write the code or how it looks. Everything is very well designed. How much of that is coming from your background being a data scientist, or is it the experience that you gained through Vercel, dealing with code, learning from experts there, or
Yep.
Through clients that you got to know in Vercel?
Yeah, great question. For me, design has always been one of the most important parts when it comes to building a product. Even before Vercel, when I was building my own side projects, I would try my best to make it. I would go to Dribbble, like back when Dribbble was still really popular. I would go to these different platforms to get inspiration on how to craft the perfect user experience and user interface. Obviously, back then I didn't have as much experience, so the designs that I made was not as like polished as I would do now. But then my experience at Vercel really sort of like honed in that aspect of design. Like, as you know, Vercel has a very strong emphasis on good design and having good design engineers writing the best code when it comes to front-end engineering, and having a high bar for design. So that's sort of like where I became even more obsessed about building products with good design. And I've said this before in a different podcast, but design is basically like, about this saying called first impressions matter, right? People look at your product regardless of how incredible your backend or your infrastructure is. If you don't have good design, it's hard to get people to be interested about the backend, the infrastructure, the actual underlying code. So it's important to have that first impression that is stunning. And Vercel sort of taught me that even more. And then over time, I sort of cultivated that belief, and that's exactly what we're doing at Dub right now. And also with Novel, with that side project of mine, back on my startup Vercel, I really wanted something like, there are still a lot of these like rich tech editors out there that work nicely, but they didn't have that Notion level design. So I was like, okay, let's create something that has that. And at Dub also, like it's also very inspired by like existing solutions in the market that didn't have care for good design or good UX, and that sort of like inspired me to build something that's much better and stand out from the competition that way. So design is definitely one of the most important things or levers. And it's also another good aspect of it is, especially if you're building a company and you have a product that has great design, you generally it really contributes to word of mouth and product-led growth, because people see your product and they're like, okay, this is a fantastic product, I'm going to tell all my friends, all my colleagues about it, and that's how word spreads. And if you don't have good design, it's hard to sort of tap into that network effect. So yeah, that's also another aspect why I'm a big fan of design.
A lot of insights there to unpack. One is that you mentioned Dub, or the solution that you are providing through Dub might not be unique. There are alternatives out there, but through your system and the good developer experience or the extra features that you're providing, you've made it in a way very interesting to use. I have came across link managements before, but once I signed up for Dub, I was like, okay, I love using it for whatever reason that is. It's nice design. It has everything that I need in terms of the analytics, and it just made sense. Before we dive deeper into Dub and what it is, I want to get your sense on, the company there as well. I want to know, at what point did you realize, okay, now I want to just go all in on this, and kind of ventured out of Vercel and followed your own pursuit?
Yeah, that's a fantastic question. It's honestly, I would say there's never a perfect time for that. So I can double back a little bit and sort of give some context about how Dub started. So Dub started actually back in 2022 as a side project of mine when I was at Vercel. It was mostly my attempt to better understand the products that we were launching at Vercel at the time. It was called Edge Middleware. It's basically a way to run code at a very close proximity to users instead of running it at a centralized like US East location. So so I built this. It was like I launched it on Hacker News at the time, like open source Bitly alternative. So all the code was open source and it had great design, and it actually got to #1 on Hacker News at the time. And it started, like, the snowball effect started happening. People starting on GitHub, got on GitHub trending multiple times, and eventually there just started there was like this huge like open source community built around it. And since day one, I've already monetized the product. I sort of messed up the pricing when I first launched, and people were like, wow, $99 a month for a link shortener, that's insane. So I quickly like switched that over to $9 a month and then started iterating with pricing. So pricing is a very interesting thing. We can dive more into that later. But yeah, so I started a side project, started making a little bit of money here and there. And then over time, I realized that a lot of people were actually using Dub, not just for marketing campaigns, but also for affiliate marketing. So affiliates would sign up on Dub and use Dub for all their links, and then they would get the analytics reports and use that to basically generate revenue for their company by reporting it to the brands that they're working with. So, and interestingly, the affiliate space was also a space that I was familiar with, because when I was building warmer domains before, I would participate in the affiliate programs of these different registrars like GoDaddy, Namecheap, etc. And I realized the sort of the quality of the affiliate software that they would use is just atrocious, and there's not one platform that had great design or had the ability to integrate directly into your product. So I can talk more about that too, about the direction that Dub is headed towards. And also, more importantly, there's also no really a good solution out there that had great developer experience. So that's another thing that sort of all these combined, and especially as I started seeing early signs of product market fit for Dub, that's when things started to click. And while it was really hard to sort of leave and go start on company, I realized eventually that there's no perfect timing. There's no like a magical moment where, oh, today's the day we're gonna do it. So eventually I was like, yeah, we just gotta like sort of rip the band-aid off and start full time, because like it you really need to choose one or the other to be able to put all of your focus into, or else you won't be doing a good job on either. So back in January of this year, I basically started a company around Dub, and that's when everything started happening. And we've been growing incredibly fast this year. I can go more into that as well, but it's definitely one of the best decisions I've made in my life to sort of go all in into this company that I'm building now. So
beautiful. Yeah, I would love for you to share some stats of from the time that you kickstarted Dub on the sidelines, then continued on dedicating your time 100% to this, and then growing it to the extent that it is now. And actually, maybe you would want to walk us through what the product actually is, what the offerings are. If you want to share the screen, that'd be okay too. If not, just tell us what it is. And because oftentimes when you hear link management, maybe you just think of links that you share on social media, or maybe affiliate marketing, but it goes beyond that. It can actually help you track a lot of stuff that you are not tracking already, and it just makes it easy to just have a single domain. I know you have created more features now for custom domains, custom .link domains that comes with the pro features and stuff. So yeah, why don't you just walk us through what Dub is and actually how we can use it?
Dub is the open source link management and marketing attribution platform. So think everything from short links to QR codes to deep links, and on the analytics side, understanding how your clicks are actually converting to signups and sales. And I think that's something that we do that no other platform has ever done in this space before, and that's how we're sort of changing up the game. We're not bucketing ourselves into just a link shortener. What we're trying to do is building this end-to-end attribution infrastructure for companies to understand how their marketing efforts are actually translating to revenue. And the inspiration for this actually came about during my DevRel developer advocacy days at Vercel, where we would create all of these like side projects with templates and tweet it out or post it on LinkedIn. And we didn't really have a very reliable approach to understand how those templates are actually converting to signups and sales and retention over time. We would have these like client-side solutions like Google Analytics or Heap Analytics, and while those work to an extent, it always felt very flaky to me, because like, for example, you would track a sign up when someone lands on a welcome page, and track an upgrade event when someone lands on a thank you page, and all of these were done on the client side. So it's also potentially could be blocked by ad blockers, and you also don't get that in-depth understanding of how your users and customers actually progress over time. Do they actually invite their team and expand on your platform, or do they churn after a month? And there's no sort of visibility into that. And that's sort of what we're going to build with Dub, and we actually have been beta testing this with a few customers already, ourselves included. I'm a big fan of dogfooding our technology, and it's basically this conversion tracking API that you can use to accurately track when someone signs up on your platform, and then eventually when they upgrade to a plan, we give you a Stripe integration that listens to your checkout events and also your subscription update events, to be able to understand like how those users actually grew with you over time, or if they were to churn after a month or two, you have that visibility into the entire user journey, to be able to make better decisions as to which channels or which marketing platforms that you want to dedicate your efforts into. And that's sort of like what we're building right now. We're calling this product Dub Conversions, and we've used it to understand like all these different like launches that we do on Twitter and LinkedIn, which ones are driving more signups and sales over time, and building on top of that, you can build a white labeled referral program that lives directly inside your product, because by leveraging the conversion tracking API, you can generate links that have conversion tracking built in, and you can give those links to your affiliates, and whenever people sign up through their links, you're able to see like, okay, does this user actually does this referral actually bring in new users that have a long customer lifetime value, or do they just churn after a month? Like, being able to assess the quality of referrals is also another big thing that we enable you to do. So yeah, that's basically what we're building. And over this last, I would say 10 months now, we've been growing really quickly. In 2024, we 10x our revenue, and we started at last year we actually, I think, 13x our revenue. So it's been growing really fast over the years. And yeah, and we're just getting started, because this conversion product is still in very early stages. And when it comes to like discovering product market fit, the product is already ready, but we still need to figure out like how to get people to adopt it at larger marketing orgs. But yeah, we're very excited to see how this keeps progressing over time.
That's really interesting. I didn't know about the conversion tracking feature of the whole system here. And I think that's really, really interesting. One thing is to track, where your traffic is coming from, or how different campaigns or channels are contributing to a specific product, but also tracking signups, and then maybe later on users, paid users, churn offs and stuff. That's actually really interesting. And you're right, I've used alternative products that really seem finicky when you are trying to for example, use Google Analytics. It's oftentimes there's mismatch of information. There's not correct information. Sometimes in the front-end development or front-end code, it just gets there's a specific way to track this views and counts in React apps. For example, if you don't do it correctly, you're not really seeing the data. So it's interesting to have a product that works actually there to be able to track everything, whether you're working for a marketing campaign or from a company perspective. If you're creating a product, if I have a course, let's say for NextJs, and I want to know which of my channels or which of, I don't know, my tweets or videos is doing better in terms of driving people to that course, for example, or if I have a product or a SaaS product that I want to advertise. It's really interesting to have that. Now, you mentioned something about product-led growth, and that's something that I'm not struggling with, but I'm very curious to learn about more. As any developer probably would have this aspiration to create SaaS products. I have too, so I have created different products over the time. And what I have found is, oftentimes not just having a good product is going to get you customers. What you mentioned about a product-led growth is actually contradicting what I thought that I sometimes did. Now, I know that, we are coming from a traditional world where product wasn't that much important. Marketing was the first and main thing that you would invest on, and then you could just sell out a maybe not so good product. But in this day and age now, I agree that product is the first thing. So if you have a good product, you can dedicate or invest less on marketing. The product is going to just advertise itself. But walk me through your observations there. So if I am a company, if I'm a developer, if I create a product now, how would I go about actually acquiring customers? Do I charge just like you said from the get-go, or do I try to reach out to people to use it and give me feedback? Maybe the first 10, 100 customers, because that I think is a very important part of actually creating a company. Because if you don't have customers, no matter how good your product is, which are us developers like to just hone in on just creating a better and better product, and it's just in a vacuum. Nobody is using it. So what is your experience through that?
Great question. I think product-led growth and marketing, it's sort of like a chicken and egg problem, right? You product-led growth works really well once you hit a critical mass of users that are loving your product and big advocates of it, and will talk to their people, their friends and family or colleagues about it. But in the early days, you still need that initial marketing push or momentum to start the snowball effect. And there are a lot of these like websites or like aggregators or directories that you can post your products on, Product Hunt, Hacker News, a lot of these like Startup Stash or Beta Lease, all these different like platforms that you can use to get the initial word out there. And SEO is another big thing where you need to get the domain rating of your website up, and you need to start gathering backlinks, and that's sort of like the initial step that you need to take to get that initial momentum going. Without that, product-led growth would never be successful unless there's this like, I guess, a growth hack you could do, as well as if you post like product screenshots on X and Design Twitter, and people really appreciate that kind of stuff there. Although there's also a caveat there, and that's something that Dub Conversions is striving to demystify, is the number of likes. How does that actually translate to signups or sales? People might really like a design, and this is also where I want to give a caveat about good design. Good design is definitely amazing, but sometimes a lot of business decisions are not done based on that. There are stuff like SOC 2 compliance or like all of these like GDPR stuff that also comes into play, and also like a lot of enterprise features like SSO, SAML, like all those boring stuff that you gotta think about as well, that could also play a role in all of this. So yeah, I've seen a lot of products that have terrible design but are growing really quickly because they invest into growth and marketing and sales. So for Dub specifically though, we definitely want to have a balance between the two. We want to build products with great design and at the same time also talk about it. And it's tricky because if you're a fast growing startup and you need to build different features, fix bugs all the time, time's limited, and we don't have we don't have a lot of like manpower to be able to build all of these features out. So it's important to be able to limit the scope of new products or new features that you're building, and because of that, by limiting the scope, you're able to make sure that you ship good quality products without sacrificing the velocity of which you're putting this out there. So yeah, long story short, I think product-led growth is definitely a very powerful go-to-market motion, but it definitely requires a certain level of critical mass to be able to get there.
Absolutely. Okay, so you mentioned something about the origin of how Dub started, or you playing around with the edge middleware or the edge functions that is the middleware feature in Next.js. That got me curious to ask you about the stack that you're using, or maybe dive deeper about like the tech stack there. Are you using Next.js for the Dub platform?
Yes, we are full stack Next.js. I can go deeper into this. This is one of my favorite parts. So yeah, we're full stack Next.js, and the crazy thing about this, I actually wanted to like submit a CFP for NextConf to talk about it, but I missed the deadline. But we actually process about 20 to 25 million redirects every month using Next.js middleware alone. So it's literally just the middleware handles all the redirects, all the like analytics, attribution, logging, and all those stuff using a single middleware file, which is kind of crazy. And you can find all of this. It's our entire code base is open source, so you can check out the code in our GitHub repo. It's git.new/dub. I'm just gonna plug this. But yeah, so we use Next.js for the entire application, for both the app.dub.code, the actual dashboard, as well as the we call it the dub proxy, which is the redirects portion, as well as all the different other features that we have. And the marketing side is also Next.js, and we use Tailwind for CSS. I feel like everyone's using Tailwind now, and Frame of Motion for animations, as well as what else? We use Turbo Repo for our build system, and Redis. We use Redis on Upstash for caching and to serve all the redirects. And then for the actual relational database, we're using PlanetScale MySQL, and then the analytic stuff, like all the high volume click events and other types of events, we store all of those inside Tinybird, which uses ClickHouse SQL under the hood. So yeah, this is our entire tech stack. There's a lot of moving pieces, and obviously GitHub and Vercel for code and CI/CD deployments. So yeah, that's basically everything, I think, if I didn't miss anything. So
yeah, great products there you mentioned from Next.js, which is it's interesting that this whole platform, or the backbone of it, is built on top of middlewares in Next.js, with the amount of redirects or traffic that you're getting or you're talking about is just astonishing to see what you can build. It's also great to see such a great company or product is open source. Now, oftentimes when you build an amazing product, open sourcing it might be like something you want to dwell on. You're like, do I release it out in the world, or do I just use it in my company? It's very interesting that the technology that you're using, the code base is open source, meaning that somebody can just spin up and use their own technology instead of yours. But still, you're seeing this much of growth and success. So I have more questions about the tech stack, but why don't you talk about this part of it as well? Because it's contradictory in the sense that you're just releasing it out in the wild, and you feel like in the beginning that you're just giving it away, but then also it brings success as for NextJS or similar pattern for your company.
Yeah. I've been asked this countless times, and I think it's probably time to write a blog post about it. But the reason why we are open source, there are multiple reasons, and for us, the way we see it is that the code itself is not the moat. The moat is the network of links that we're building up, as well as the data that we're collecting with all the clicks and all the analytics data points, and the community as well that comes out of it. So that goes back to open source. Like the reason why we're open source, first of all, is security. Mark Zuckerberg once said that open source software is generally more secure because every git commit, every pull request that you put out there needs to be scrutinized to make sure that you're not publishing any like security vulnerabilities out there. So we have a very rigorous review process when it comes to pushing new code, and that's one benefit. And transparency too, especially when you're working with larger enterprise clients and need to do security audits. Having an open source code base is incredibly valuable for these audit processes to sort of like expedite them, because they can go in there and make sure that there's no either security issues or privacy concerns when it comes to collecting user data and selling advertising data and stuff like that. So all of those is definitely a very good thing about being open source. And thirdly, the community that comes out of open source is also fantastic. Like, people love talking about open source products, and they generally would, if they were to choose between another caveat is that open source, back maybe like 2010, 2015, open source was associated with like, oh, it's a free product, not as good quality, design is not as great. But I feel like nowadays, 2024, open source is completely different, or at least what we're doing here is that we are open source, but at the same time we have a much better product and design than existing solutions. And if someone were to choose, we've gotten that feedback from customers all the time where they are choosing between Dub, Bitly, and all these different solutions that are existing out there. They always choose Dub because of, not just because we have great design, but also because we're open source, and that sort of like aligns with their values. And so yeah, there are several. Those are the several reasons why open source. And on top of that, we also have a license. Our open source license is the AGPL license, which generally forbids people like large enterprises, companies, to just clone our repo entirely and run a commercial product on top of that. Obviously, small developers that cannot afford to pay for Dub, they are more than welcome to just spin up their own instance. Like individual users, we don't restrict that. So that's also another flexibility. You get to use Dub without needing to pay for a license, for a subscription, if that's something you cannot afford. But at the same time, it also allows us to work with, for example, the Malaysian government actually cloned Dub's repo and is building their official government link shortener. It's go.gov.my on top of Dub's code base, and it's all going to be open source as well. They're actually replacing a lot of our the services that we're using, like Tinybird, Upstash, Shortener, and PlanetScale, with their own infrastructure, which is really cool. And that's something that wouldn't have been possible if we were closed source. So yeah, I would say those are some of the reasons why open source.
Open source, yeah. Would any of the progress that you've made in terms of the product itself, do you contribute any of that to the open source community actually building or going beyond what you could have done alone on your own in terms of just the product?
Yeah, great. I love that you mentioned that, because so this month is Hacktoberfest, and Dub is actually participating in Hacktoberfest in conjunction with OSS.gg. I'm sure if you heard of that, but it's basically we're partnering with, I think, 6 other open source companies to provide incentives like MacBooks and like some different exciting prizes for folks who contribute open source. And through this initiative, we've actually solved some of the long-standing issues that I could never figure out. For example, one of the more exciting ones is being able to add a logo inside our QR code API. So we have a QR code API that you can use to programmatically generate QR codes, and within the Dub dashboard, you can generate QR codes with a logo. But for some reason inside the API, it didn't work. And through this open source initiative, we were able to get this to work, and that's super exciting. And there are a lot of other like smaller bugs that have been on the platform since like a year ago that a lot of contributors actually went in there and got those fixed. So that's definitely a beautiful thing about open source. Another thing that I think is tangentially related is the ability to integrate solution. Like for example, like we're working with Cal.com to integrate Dub conversions into their platform, and Cal.com is fully open source as well. So I was able to go in there and actually spin up the PR with all the like dependency changes and the code changes, and we were able to get that merged. So this sort of like being open source, you're able to foster the ecosystem and community contributions, as well as working with external clients and vendors for them to easily integrate solutions into your platform. So that's definitely a great way to like speed up code iteration and execution.
So all I'm getting is that despite the initial resistance that you might have open sourcing your product, the sum is always positive because of all the things that you just mentioned, from collaborations with different open source, from contributions to the developer community, and also enabling other folks to kind of use the code as a resource for inspiration in building even different products is the reasons why you should do this. And it's interesting you mentioned this differentiation between, if I want to choose a technology today, if there is an open source version, probably I will be more inclined to it because it's open, probably it's more secure, probably it has a lot more contributors, and that by the virtue of the fact that they are open source and get not holding anything secret, it just makes it that much more available and desirable in terms of just user perspective. Now I want to also ask you about how your life as a developer has changed now running a company. How many team members do you have, or how much of your time is now watching over other people than coding yourself?
Yeah, we're currently a team of 5, and I fortunately I still get to code quite a bit, mostly because we're small and there's a lot of bugs that need to be fixed and new features that need to be built. But as we onboarded more and more engineers, and it's something that I'm trying to do more, is delegating some tasks to the different engineers that are on our team. And that has been working out really well. And I think being able to work with people that are much smarter than you when it comes to engineering is a privilege that I really enjoy being able to do. And because there are a lot of, for example, there's been a couple of updates to our dashboard on Dub recently that wouldn't have been possible if I didn't get a chance to work with these incredible engineers and designers on our team. So I think that's something that I'm definitely very grateful for, being able to work with professionals that are really good at their craft. Going back to your question about being able to still code as a founder, it definitely I don't have that opportunity as much as I would before when I was just building this as a side project, because there's so many other things that require my attention, such as I do a lot of customer support. I'm the only one doing customer support at this point, so as you can imagine, we have 50,000 plus users and a lot of enterprise inquiries as well. So that's something that I've been navigating and trying to get through all of those as fast as I can. And then there's also the legal side of things, like SOC 2 compliance. That's something that we're wrapping up currently as well, and marketing and all these different auxiliary tasks that come into play when you're a founder. And because of that, like, I don't really have the opportunity to code as much, but I like it. I think like being a founder, it really pushes your creativity and also focus to the maximum. If before, when I was working a day job, I was using, say, I don't know, 80% of my mental power every day, right now I'm using 100%, 110% every day, and I come back every day after I finish work, I feel satisfied and exhausted, but mostly satisfied of the level of output that I've given on a given day. So yeah, that's definitely something that I really, really enjoy, despite all the challenges and stress that comes along with it. And I realized too over time is that like building a company it's a marathon, not a sprint, and it doesn't make sense to go all out and burn out within a matter of months, because it's like a multi-year play. It's 5 to 7 years, if not more than that. And because of that, like we value a lot like work-life balance to an extent at Dub. Like we try to be able to respect people's weekends, and not do like all-nighters and stuff like that. Like it's something that I'm trying to like defy the norm of high growth startups, of like I've been through some of those myself and I didn't really enjoy it, and I think that's something we're trying to do better at Dub. We try and schedule launches at a good pace without burning out, and try to like work together and yeah, at a very like healthy pace as well. So anyways, I went on a tangent there, but
yeah, that's all interesting, because this is different aspects of starting a company. Because as developers, we like to code. Obviously, we build a product, we feel like, well, we like to continue coding, but then there's different aspects coming into when you're hiring other people, when you're getting help, when you're starting a company that you might not have enjoyed doing, or you might not have expected to do, like doing customer support. Might be something that you enjoy because it's your own company, you want to serve your customers, but might not be something that you signed up for when you created this product. So it's good to know different aspects of this. Now, the question popped into my mind when you talked about customer support. Are you using AI in any of these different buckets of work that it is involved in the company?
Yeah, we are not currently. I've never really had a good experience with AI when it comes to customer support before, personally. I do see how it can like reduce the workload, especially if especially if you have certain questions documented already. And that I wanted to take a segue here and mention the different levels of support. And this is something that I learned from Zeno, actually, from Recent, where he mentioned an analogy of support being a try-catch block, where you have inside the try block, you have your documentation, help center, GitHub issues, Stack Overflow if you're a developer tool, and then the catch block is where support comes in. So having good documentation is key to reducing support workloads, and that's what we try to do. We have a lot of like help articles that people can reference to when setting up their custom domain, using different advanced link features that we have in Dub. So and then at the end of the day, when they still run into issues, that's when they reach out to support, and I generally try to get to each and one of them as fast as possible. So yeah, we have not like basically used AI to speed up the workflows, but what we're trying to do actually is building like a ask AI feature within our help article, our help center, using vector search and like retrieval augmented generation, RAG.
Yes.
Being able to like have an AI enhanced conversation with the users when they're looking for a certain help article is definitely incredibly helpful. That's what we're trying to do as well to speed up that feedback cycle and feedback loop. But generally, I try to like put a human element to it, because it's something that is rare and valuable in today's day and age.
Yeah, I think you can benefit from the ask AI, because sometimes, having a good documentation definitely is the first step, but sometimes, folks might not find that part of the documentation that answers their question, and being able to just ask AI, which just has access to that document, is another step of a better user experience. And then on top of it, a good customer support can just close the loop. Who better than the creator or the founder of the company now to answer the question? So that's great to have that.
100%.
Now, in terms of AI in general, not specifically in your customer support and stuff, what is your take on AI, on coding, on the future of us developers?
AI is definitely not going to replace developers, I would say. It is. I know there's a lot of like hot takes, or like people saying, oh, developers can lose their job and stuff like that, but it's just simply not true, because I feel like AI, it's hard for AI to replicate creativity and this sort of like human thinking when it comes to design system, not system, but like systems design, and being able to think through the architecture of a given infrastructure or a given front-end application. So, but it's important for developers to be able to leverage AI to speed up their workflows, and it takes a certain developer to be able to distinguish between good AI output and bad AI output, because I use Cursor a lot for day-to-day development, and sometimes, most of the time it's good, but sometimes you can come up with code that it's either buggy or not secure. So it's really important for you as a developer to be able to understand the differences there. But generally, AI is definitely fantastic for speeding up workflows and making you more productive, as well as, like, for example, if you're building out something that you're not very familiar with, like navigating with, I don't know, AutoCAD for that's something that I was dealing with yesterday. AI can really help you understand like the SDK attributes that you might not know, and it can just go through types and just generate all the output for you. So that's another very good use case for AI, just being able to quickly get started with a new SDK that you were dealing with. And that's why I sort of think that TypeScript and AI go hand in hand really well, because TypeScript, I used to, when I first started using TypeScript, I was like, I hated it because it felt like there are a lot of like invisible rules that keep like giving me red squiggly lines. But then I realized over time that TypeScript is actually a documentation system. It's a way for developers to understand which attributes are valid and which ones are not. So like I do think that TypeScript and AI work hand in hand really well, because AI can quickly understand the types and can quickly give you the correct outputs based on that. So yeah, I love what Colin is doing with Zod, Colin Hacks. Zod is also a great way to build systems that interact really well with AI as well. So yeah, went on a little tangent here as well, but I think AI is definitely a net positive thing for developer workflows.
Yeah, I like your use case there for AI, and I've had the similar experience of using AI for figuring out or exploring new SDKs or libraries that I don't know, and it just speeds up the process. And I never thought about AI and TypeScript together, but you're right in that TypeScript is just a documentation in code, and AI can benefit from it. And if you're not familiar, I remember back when I was working, or when I was just trying to figure out Prisma, and all the features or all the different queries and aggregations that you can run on a database, for example. And then Copilot that I was using it at that time was recommending stuff to me that I didn't know, but then speeded up my learning so fast. So I think you can leverage AI definitely at this point in time, at least, to enhance your workflow as a developer. And then
100%. And I just want to give a shout out to the folks at Speakeasy. So we use Speakeasy to generate our TypeScript and our Python, Ruby, PHP, and Go SDKs. And it's really good because it basically, one thing that AI is bad at is staying up to date with the latest conventions and latest syntax. And in part of that is because like the open API specs for a given SDK or API is not up to date. So I think that's what Speakeasy does really well, is that every time you push a change to open API, it generates a new version of SDKs, and then you can review and merge the PR and automatically publishes that new version. So by like leveraging all these tools like TypeScript, Zod, Speakeasy, you can really create a really good developer experience for someone who doesn't even know your SDK at all. They're able to use the latest syntax thanks to an updated Open API spec, as well as your SDK definitions. So yeah, I think there's definitely, these are some of the aspects that really help craft the perfect sort of developer experience, and AI is like a additional layer on top of that too.
Makes it all come together and easier. Absolutely. So it was a nice talk, Steven, here with you. We were going to put links in the show notes for your social channels and also Dub for anybody who's interested into learning more about it. Any final thoughts that you want to share before we wrap up?
I don't think there's anything that comes to mind, but it's been a pleasure chatting here. And well, it's still Hacktoberfest this month, so if you guys want to contribute to open source, feel free to head over to oss.gg, and that's where you see all the instructions and different teams that you can, different open source projects that you can contribute to. There are a lot of really cool ones like Papermark, Unkey, Formbreaks, Hanko, and a few others. So yeah, I definitely recommend checking it out. And if you want to, send me a DM or ask me any questions about my journey open source, feel free to DM me on Twitter. And yeah, that's pretty much it. Thanks again for listening in.
Awesome. Thank you for joining me again, Steven, on this podcast. And folks, if you have any questions, like always, you can hit me up in the comments, and I'll see you guys in the next one. Bye-bye.
Take care.